Imagine discovering that a respected historical scholar, somebody with a massive reputation, literally took a knife to their own ancient manuscripts.
Right, just physically scraping away the ink.
Yeah, erasing their own historical traditions.
Mm.
And all because their political or theological rivals started using those very texts to win arguments.
It is a wild thing to think about.
It really is. Well, welcome to Reform Thinking. You are listening to a brand new deep dive into a historical landscape that is just covered in deliberate redactions and honestly ideological cover-ups.
Which makes it such an incredible subject to investigate.
Oh, absolutely. So today we are digging into Matthew Poole's commentary on the Holy Bible. Specifically, we are looking at his analysis of Psalm 2. And the mission for you today, listening to this, is to uncover how a text written millennia ago by a king operates on so many different levels.
Yeah, there is a lot going on beneath the surface.
Right. You are going to see hidden historical admissions, startling cover-ups, and some really stark, urgent warnings.
So, jumping right in, the core argument that Poole establishes right out of the gate in this commentary is about the authorship.
Okay.
So, while King David is the penman of the words like, he physically wrote them down, the primary intention of the Holy Ghost was never to describe David.
Wait, so David writes it, but it's not about him.
Yeah, that is the main point here. The true subject, the complete scope of the text, was designed from the beginning to describe the Messiah and his kingdom.
But proving that is where the whole historical cover-up comes into play, right?
Yeah.
Because Poole doesn't just quote the New Testament to validate this.
No, he doesn't. He brings in a massive admission from ancient Hebrew writers.
Which is fascinating.
It really is. Specifically, he brings up Rabbi Solomon Jarchi.
Okay, let's unpack this guy a bit.
So if we look at the textual validation first, David is confirmed as the author over in Acts chapter 4, verse 25.
Right, the early church is praying and they quote it.
Yeah. And the text is proven to be about Christ using testimonies like Hebrews 1.5 and Acts 13.33. But the undeniable proof of how the ancients viewed this text before the controversies started comes from this Rabbi Solomon Jarchi.
So what did he actually say?
He explicitly stated in his writings that the ancient doctors unanimously expounded this psalm as being about the King Messiah. Unanimously. It was their accepted orthodox position. There was no debate about it.
They read the text and the consensus was total. This is about the Messiah.
Correct. But then Jarchi makes this blatant, staggering admission.
This is the part that blows my mind.
He writes that in order to answer the heretics, and by that he means the early Christians, it became expedient for them to interpret the psalm literally about David's person instead.
Okay, let me make sure I am understanding the mechanics of this.
Yeah, go ahead.
They knew the text was about the Messiah.
Yes.
They taught it was about the Messiah.
For generations, yeah.
But because the Christians were using this very text to prove their case, the opposition decided it was, more convenient to just alter their interpretation.
Just pivot entirely.
And say, oh, actually, it is only about David.
Yep. That is the admission.
I mean, if someone alters a historical document to win an argument, does that not just prove they know they are losing?
It definitely shows their hand.
It is like a modern political campaign quietly deleting old web pages that contradict their current platform.
Oh, that's a great comparison.
Right. They know the old page exposes their hypocrisy, so they just scrub it from the internet and pretend it never existed.
And here is the kicker. If you look at the later editions of Jarchi's book, this entire admission, it's missing.
You're kidding. They deleted the admission of the deletion.
Yeah, it was completely removed.
Yeah.
Now, whether this happened by the fraud of editors or just the carelessness of others, we don't know for sure.
But the older ones have it.
Right. The ancient editions preserve the original confession. So what you are observing here is a conscious, deliberate shift in theological interpretation.
Driven entirely by opposition.
Exactly. Driven by opposition to another group, rather than fidelity to the text itself. They abandon what they knew to be the primary intention of the words, simply because those words validated the Christian claim.
So think about the implications of that for you, the listener.
It's convicting.
It really is a stark look in the mirror. How often do you project your own biases onto a text? Or how often do you alter your understanding of a situation simply to avoid agreeing with someone you view as an opponent?
We all do it to some degree. We don't want to concede a point to the other side.
Yeah, but to literally erase your own history to do it, it's wild.
And what is brilliant about Poole's commentary is how it connects this historical resistance, this desperate attempt to cover up the true king, directly to the very first verses of the psalm itself.
Oh, wow. So the commentators are doing the very thing the text describes.
Yes. The commentators fighting the text are perfectly mirroring the characters described within the text.
Because the text itself opens with a massive, furious resistance.
Right.
The first question asked is, why do the heathen rage and the people imagine a vain thing?
So you have two distinct groups combining forces here.
Let's break those groups down.
The identification is very clear in Poole's analysis. The heathen refers to the Gentiles,
Okay.
and the people refers to the Jews, or the Israelites.
Got it.
Now, both groups combined against David historically, but more significantly, both groups combined against Christ.
So this plays out in the New Testament.
Yeah, you had Herod, Pilate, and the Roman authorities representing the heathen, and they were standing right alongside the Jewish leaders who represented the people.
And what are they putting all their mental and physical energy into? The text says they are imagining a vain thing.
They are plotting a coup.
Right. The text says the kings of the earth set themselves and the rulers take counsel together against the Lord and against his anointed.
Notice the specific phrase there, kings of the earth.
Why point that out?
It is used to show contempt for their madness. I mean, these are finite, earthbound rulers trying to oppose the God of heaven.
It's absurd on its face.
And their hostility is deliberate. The phrase, set themselves, indicates a firm, stubborn purpose. It's not accidental.
They aren't just stumbling into a rebellion.
No, this is a calculated combination of counsels and forces against the Lord and against his chosen king.
And their stated goal is fascinating to me. They say, let us break their bands asunder and cast away their cords from us.
This is where the psychological insight of the commentary is just staggering.
Yeah, why are they actually fighting?
The psychological motivation behind this global rebellion is entirely about autonomy.
Autonomy. Okay.
The bands and cords refer to the laws of God. Now, these laws are in themselves easy and pleasant.
Well, to some people.
Right. To good men, they bring joy, but they are grievous and burdensome to a corrupt nature.
I want to focus on that mechanism for a second, because the rebellion is not against tyranny.
No, not at all.
They're not fighting an evil dictator. They are fighting against holy constraint.
That's a great way to put it.
Think of a toddler fighting against being strapped into a car seat.
Oh, perfect analogy.
Right. To the toddler, those straps are grievous cords. They're limiting freedom. The toddler screams, thrashes around, trying to break the bands asunder.
Because they just want to move around freely.
Exactly. But to the parent, those straps are life-saving bands. They're there for protection and safety.
And if that toddler actually manages to unbuckle themselves, the immediate result is not freedom.
No.
It is catastrophic danger.
Yes. The toddler's attempt to break the seatbelt is the very definition of imagining a vain thing.
Yes.
First, it is essentially impossible for the toddler to achieve by their own strength.
Thankfully.
Yeah. And second, if they succeeded in breaking the cords, the result would be disastrous for them. The freedom they are demanding is the thing that would destroy them.
And the kings of the earth are acting like toddlers in the back seat here.
Yeah, they really are.
They are raging against the restraints of a holy God, thinking that throwing off his laws will bring them liberation.
They want to cast the cords far away so they can never be recovered.
They want permanent autonomy.
Which brings into sharp relief the absolute madness of the situation.
Yeah, when you look at who is actually rebelling.
You have dust and ashes rulers confined to a tiny rock in space, shaking their fists at the eternal sovereign, demanding that he stop telling them what to do.
It is laughable.
They take counsel together, thinking they can outsmart omniscience and overpower omnipotence.
So if all the leaders of the earth are plotting this massive coup, how does heaven react?
Yeah, are the angels barricading the doors?
Not quite. The text gives the sovereign reaction from the heavens, and it is a massive contrast to the raging on earth.
He that sitteth in the heavens shall laugh. The Lord shall have them in derision.
Down below, you have the kings of the earth running around, taking counsel, sweating, plotting, setting themselves in battle arrays.
Total chaos.
Right, and up above, you have he that sitteth in the heavens.
Sitteth. Yes. Sitting implies a posture of total rest and absolute authority. This is a judge upon a tribunal.
Unmoved.
Unmoved. This is a king upon a royal throne who does not even need to stand up to crush his enemies.
Wait, I need to stop you there, though. God is laughing.
Yeah, it says he laughs.
That feels incredibly out of character for how most people view him. People usually picture a gentle deity maybe looking down with mild disappointment.
Or just sadness.
Right. A laughing, mocking deity sounds petty or vindictive to modern ears. How do you reconcile that?
It is startling, sure, but you have to look at the mechanical difference in authority here.
Okay.
This is not humor. God is not amused in a lighthearted way. This laughter is the supreme expression of unassailable sovereignty facing absurd arrogance.
It's the sheer ridiculousness of the rebellion.
Yeah. Poole's commentary notes that God despises and derides their crafty devices. The laughter is the act of manifesting to the whole world that the plots of these earthly kings are ridiculous, contemptible follies.
Yeah. It is the laughter of a steamroller looking at an army of ants declaring war on it.
Wow. Okay, that puts it in perspective. It exposes the massive gap in capability.
Absolutely.
And the reaction does not stop at laughter. The next verse says, "Then shall he speak unto them in his wrath, and vex them in his sore displeasure."
The timing here is key. The word then.
Meaning what?
Meaning right in the middle of all their plots. Right when they are most confident of their success. That is when God speaks.
But God speaking in his wrath is not just a verbal rebuke, right?
No, in ancient texts, God speaking is often put for his actions.
So he speaks by acting.
Yes. He speaks by executing dreadful judgments. He pronounces a terrible sentence against them, and the execution of that sentence is what vexes them.
Think about what this conveys to you regarding modern anxieties.
Oh, this is so relevant today.
You look around and the world often seems chaotic. Leaders make reckless decisions, nations rage, and it can feel like everything is spiraling completely out of control.
It's easy to get caught up in the panic.
Very easy. But this text insists that the heavenly posture remains totally secure and unbothered. The throne is not shaking.
It provides immense stability for the mind. When you realize that the ultimate authority is seated and unthreatened, it reframes every earthly crisis.
It shrinks the crisis down to its actual size.
Exactly. The raging of the nations is loud, but it is not effective against the decrees of heaven.
So if heaven is totally unbothered by this global rebellion, how does God actually counter the plot? Does he send a massive army?
No, he does something far more definitive. He aggressively plants his chosen monarch right in their midst.
The text says, "Yet have I set my king upon my holy hill of Zion."
The word set here means anointed, designed, or constituted.
So it's an official appointment.
Yes, and this king is set in a singular manner. He does not receive his kingdom by succession from former kings.
He didn't inherit it from a dying father.
Right, and he does not get his position through a democratic election by the people.
No voting involved.
His authority comes by special and extraordinary destination directly from God.
He is a king who rules in God's stead. He executes perfect justice. And look at the word yet.
Yet have I set my king.
Notwithstanding all the artifices, all the powerful combinations of the earth, all the raging and plotting, yet.
It is such a dismissive word to the rebels.
It makes me think of a chess game.
How so?
Well, imagine a novice player spends half an hour plotting this elaborate 10-move trap.
Oh, I know this feeling.
They're sweating, calculating every angle, totally convinced they've cornered the opponent. And the grandmaster just looks at the board, slides one piece forward, a single square, and the entire scheme is ruined instantly. Yet.
That is brilliant. All the council of the rulers is dismantled by the singular action of God installing his king.
And the geographic location of this installation is crucial too, right? Upon my holy hill of Zion.
Yes. Poole traces the shifting, expansive definition of Zion throughout the historical text.
Because it does not just say a literal hill forever.
No, it starts strictly as a hill on the north part of Jerusalem. There was a strong fort there, and when David took it, he called it the City of David.
It became the political center.
It became the head of his kingdom. But the concept expands over time. It becomes a term for the whole city of Jerusalem, then for the temple built on Moriah.
So it moves from a military fort to a religious center.
Right. Eventually, it represents the entire church of the Jews, and finally, it comes to symbolize the complete Christian church.
So when God says he has set his king on Zion, he is establishing Christ's authority over his entire people across all of time.
The scope is massive.
Think about it. If you are a leader elected by a fragile majority, you have to constantly worry about toll numbers and opposition parties.
Your rule is tenuous at best.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But a leader placed by eternal decree on the holy hill of Zion, that is absolute permanence.
And because God has firmly established this king, the king himself now steps forward to speak.
The text shifts voices here.
Yes. The king publishes the legal decree of his own legitimacy. He says, I will declare the decree. The Lord hath said unto me, Thou art my son. This day have I begotten thee.
Promulgation is essential to all laws. A law is not binding on the public until it is officially declared.
People have to know about it.
Right, so the son is standing up and saying, here is the official decree of my kingship. take notice.
And this verse cannot merely be about David.
Going back to Poole's main argument.
Yes. While David was a son of God in a general sense, as believers are, the specific exalted title of "Thou art my son" belongs properly to Christ.
The New Testament writers make that abundantly clear.
The Holy Ghost appropriates this title exclusively to Christ in the New Testament.
But the phrase, "This day have I begotten thee," demands massive unpacking. The breakdown of "this day" in Poole's commentary is absolutely mind-bending.
It really stretches human comprehension.
Because how can there be a today in eternity?
It is a remarkable piece of theological deduction regarding eternal generation. The phrase "this day" can refer to all eternity because in eternity there is no succession of time.
There is no yesterday and there is no tomorrow.
Eternity is all one continued moment without change or flux. There is no ticking clock.
Wow.
Therefore, the eternal relationship between the Father and the Son is always this day. It is a constant, unending present.
That is staggering to wrap your mind around.
It really is.
We are so bound by the passing of seconds and minutes that trying to conceive of an eternal now feels impossible. It defies our entire understanding of causality.
Because we live in a linear reality.
Right. But the commentary also offers a second interpretation about the manifestation of Christ's eternal sonship in time.
Yes, while Christ is eternally the Son, there was a specific day in human history when this was manifested or publicly demonstrated to the world.
And what day was that?
The commentary identifies this day primarily as the resurrection.
The resurrection. Not the nativity in Bethlehem, but the day he rose from the dead.
Exactly. Acts 13.33 directly links this verse in Psalm 2 to the resurrection. The Apostle Paul writes that Christ was declared to be the Son of God with absolute authority by the resurrection from the dead.
So the resurrection proves the sonship.
Yes. The resurrection is called a regeneration or a second birth. It is a restitution of life by the peculiar and mighty working of God.
There's a striking analogy used here from Roman history that I think clarifies this.
Oh, the double birthday.
Yes. The Roman emperors celebrated a double birthday. They had the literal day of their physical birth, and then they had the day they were advanced to the empire, the day they took the throne.
Their inauguration?
Right. Their inauguration was treated as a new birth into royal dignity.
That Roman custom illustrates the concept perfectly. The resurrection was the inauguration day of Christ's kingdom in its full manifested glory.
He was begotten from the grave, stepping into his exalted state.
But you might ask, why does the text say things are done when they are only being declared or manifested to be done?
Yeah, if he was already the Son from eternity, why say, "This day have I begotten thee" at the resurrection? It sounds like it just happened.
This is a consistent linguistic pattern in ancient writings. When a truth is hidden or obscured, and then it is suddenly brought into brilliant, undeniable light, the text speaks of it as if it just happened.
Ah, I see.
The public vindication is so absolute that it serves as the official establishment of the fact in the eyes of the world.
So the resurrection did not make Christ the Son of God.
No, it was the ultimate, irrefutable, public manifestation of a pre-existing eternal reality.
It is the final pulling back of the curtain. And once the king has declared his identity, the Father invites him to claim his rightful inheritance.
The coronation gift, essentially.
God says, "Ask of me, and I shall give thee the heathen for thine inheritance, and the uttermost parts of the earth for thy possession."
The sheer scale of this promise is vital. There is a geographical contrast that proves this cannot be limited to David.
Because David's kingdom was pretty small.
Exactly. The literal land of Canaan was a very narrow, small kingdom. It cannot accommodate the magnificent expressions used here.
You cannot look at a tiny strip of land and call it the uttermost parts of the earth. The language demands a global scope.
The inheritance includes the whole world, incorporating the Gentiles. The Father tells the Son to ask of me.
So the Son has to request it.
He is to claim or demand it as his right, by promise, by birth, and by purchase. It is an inheritance to be possessed constantly, surely, and perpetually.
But this global expansion is not just a peaceful spreading of borders.
No, there is severe judgment attached.
The king brings absolute authority. A terrifying image for the opposition is introduced. "Thou shalt break them with a rod of iron. Thou shalt dash them in pieces like a potter's vessel."
This addresses those people mentioned earlier, the ones raging and imagining vain things, the ones refusing to quietly submit.
The toddlers trying to break the cords.
Yes. The rod of iron signifies irresistible might. It is a strength that human rebellion can never withstand.
Let's examine the specific physics of the potter's vessel imagery. Why clay and iron?
It's a very specific pairing.
A potter's vessel is made of baked dirt. It is fragile, brittle, and easily shattered. When you strike a clay pot with a heavy rod of solid iron, it does not just crack.
It disintegrates.
Exactly. It shatters into 1,000 useless fragments.
That physical reality is the point of the metaphor. It illustrates the utter fragility of human resistance against divine authority.
They think they are strong.
The kings of the earth view themselves as powerful, like mountains of stone, but heaven views them as fragile clay pots.
And when the iron rod of divine justice strikes, the destruction is total and irreversible. You cannot glue a shattered clay pot back together. It is ruined permanently.
It forces you to consider the dual nature of this king.
He's not one-dimensional.
On one hand, he offers a vast, inclusive inheritance encompassing all nations and all peoples. He brings light to the uttermost parts of the earth.
But on the other hand,
He maintains absolute, crushing justice against those who stubbornly rebel. He is a savior to his subjects, but he is an iron rod to his enemies.
because the resistance is as fragile as a clay pot, the logical next step in the text is a direct, urgent warning.
A chance to change course.
The text pivots from describing the conflict to addressing the rebels directly. Be wise now, therefore, O ye kings. Be instructed, you judges of the earth.
Be wise. It means understand your true interest, look at the reality of the situation.
You are clay, he is iron.
Stop imagining vain things.
Notice the urgency in the word now. Now, while you still have time and space for repentance, now, before the iron rod falls.
And this warning is addressed specifically to kings and judges.
Why them specifically?
Because they are the ones most prone to pride. They presume upon their own greatness.
They are used to being at the top of the food chain.
They are accustomed to giving orders, not receiving them, so they think it is below them to submit to anyone.
It is hard to tell someone who holds the highest office in the land that they are actually a subordinate.
Furthermore, their authority and example carry massive weight with the general population.
So as the king goes, so goes the nation.
If the kings repent, it influences the people. By addressing the highest earthly authorities, the text establishes that this Messiah is truly the King of Kings and Lord of Lords. No one is exempt from the command to submit.
And what does that submission look like? The instruction is given: submit to the Lord with fear and rejoice with trembling.
This introduces an incredible emotional paradox.
Rejoice with trembling. How do you hold joy and terror in the same hand?
It seems contradictory at first glance.
I think of standing on the very edge of the Grand Canyon. If you have ever been there and walked right up to the rim, you know the feeling.
Oh, absolutely.
The view is absolutely breathtaking. You're thrilled, elated, and filled with joy at the immense beauty of it all. But your knees are shaking.
Because the drop is massive.
You have a very healthy, trembling respect for the mild, deep drop right in front of your toes. The joy and the terror exist at the exact same moment.
The sheer scale of the canyon creates the trembling, just as the infinite majesty of God creates reverence.
Right.
Submitting with fear means having an awful sense of his great and glorious majesty. It means being very careful to please him and deeply afraid to offend him.
You rejoice in the beauty, but you do not act recklessly on the edge. You maintain your carefulness.
You do not treat the canyon lightly, just as you must not treat the king lightly.
The commentary says, do not esteem his yoke your dishonor and grievance. That goes back to the bands and chords.
Full circle.
The rebels thought the yoke was grievous, but true wisdom realizes that being a subject to this king is a greater glory and happiness than being an emperor of the greatest earthly empire.
The joy comes from recognizing the inestimable grace and benefit of being in his kingdom. However, this joy must not devolve into carnal security.
It shouldn't make you casual.
It must not become presumption or licentiousness. That is why the trembling is added. The trembling qualifies the joy.
It keeps you grounded.
It ensures that the grace of God is not turned into wantonness. It maintains a healthy dread of God's tremendous judgments should one ever consider revolting against him again.
This asks a hard question of you listening to this. How do you respond to authority? Are you willing to be instructed? Or do you, like the kings of the earth, think your intellect or your status makes it below you to submit?
It's a very personal question.
Do you approach the divine with that trembling joy, or do you demand casual autonomy?
That internal attitude of rejoicing and trembling must translate into an external action of ultimate loyalty.
Which brings the text to its final ultimatum.
Yes. Kiss the Son, lest he be angry and you perish from the way, when his wrath is kindled but a little. Blessed are all they that put their trust in him.
Kiss the Son. Now, this was an Eastern sign of subjection and adoration.
You see it in the historical records of 1 Samuel and 1 Kings.
It is a physical demonstration of yielding your autonomy and giving your allegiance. You are submitting to his person and his government.
Here, Poole provides a brilliant logical proof to solidify the argument that the Son cannot be David.
Oh, this is the nail in the coffin for that argument.
Throughout the Psalms, David constantly, explicitly warns people not to put their trust in princes or in any man.
Over and over again.
Jeremiah states clearly that cursed is the man who trusts in man.
David points away from himself. He says, "Some trust in chariots and some in horses, but we will remember the name of the Lord."
Therefore, it would be utterly contradictory and inappropriate for David to conclude this psalm by inviting people to put their trust in him.
He would be inviting them into a curse.
The Son must be Christ, the only proper and legitimate object of human trust. He is the divine king.
The text says, "Lest he be angry when his wrath is kindled but a little." That phrase, kindled but a little, really stands out. Why is a little anger so terrible?
Because of the nature of the provocation. Rebelling against the rightful divine king is such a desperate offense that even a fraction of divine fury results in utter ruin.
A tiny spark of infinite wrath is still infinite.
Alternatively, it means his wrath will be kindled shortly or suddenly. His patience is immense, but it will not last forever. It will shortly be turned into fury against the unrepentant.
And the consequence is severe. Ye perish from the way. This means losing the right path and dying in your sins while in the very act of plotting rebellion.
It is a terrifying thought.
To face judgment while your hands are still full of the weapons you forged against heaven.
It highlights the fleeting nature of patience and the intense urgency of the command. The warning is to take heed that you neither deny nor delay subjection.
Don't put it off.
You must speedily comply with his offers and commands before the door closes and the iron rod falls.
But it does not end on the note of destruction.
No, it ends with hope.
It ends with a benediction. Blessed are all they that put their trust in him. Underneath that blessing is the implied truth that those who oppose him are miserable creatures. But the explicit final word is a promise of immense safety and happiness for those who put themselves under his protection.
It resolves the tension introduced in the very beginning. The heathen rage and plot vain things, leading to their own shattering. But those who trust the installed king find an unshakable blessing.
You are shown that human history, despite all its chaotic raging, is not spiraling out of control.
A king has been firmly set on Zion.
The safest, most rational place in the entire universe is in joyful, trembling submission to his rule.
We have covered massive ground today.
We really have. You saw the shocking revelation of ancient commentators scratching out their own books to hide the truth about the Messiah.
You watched the futile, raging rebellion of Earth's leaders trying to break the cords of holy law.
You heard the sovereign, unthreatened laughter from the throne room of heaven.
You witnessed the unshakable installation of the Son on Zion, his decree of eternal generation, and the terrifying promise of the iron rod shattering the clay pots of human resistance.
And finally, you heard the urgent, gracious invitation to kiss the Son, to trade vain rebellion for trembling joy, and to find blessing by trusting in him. It brings the conversation right back to where it started.
Full circle.
You judge those ancient commentators for scrubbing their texts, for refusing to acknowledge the true king because it contradicted their established agenda.
But here's a final thought for you to mull over long after the audio stops.
If those ancient scholars were willing to doctor their own history books just to avoid yielding to this king, what rationalizations are you currently constructing in your own mind to avoid yielding the uttermost parts of your life to his rule? Are you trying to white out the demands of the Son, or are you ready to kiss the king?